how can we fix one of the most common problems that comes with weightlifting? And that's muscle imbalances. As you all know, sometimes muscle imbalances can be quite obvious to the point where you can see them, and other times not so obvious, but they can have severe consequences. And some of these consequences can lead to having an uneven physique, impaired performance, joint instability, pain, and just being prone to injury. The great thing is, no matter how bad your imbalance may be, by doing these 4 things you can fix that problem. But at first we really need to understand what are imbalances and the different types. The 3 most common imbalances are joint muscular imbalance, which usually comes from having bad posture; side to side muscle imbalance, what most people mean bigger or stronger muscle from the corresponding side; and then you have dominant muscle groups, where one muscle group is easier to grow or is just more dominant than the other. For example, your chest might be easier to grow compared to your shoulders, which creates an uneven physique. So the first thing we can do to fix muscle imbalances is to train the weaker side first, and by improving mind-muscle connection with the weaker side. To improve your mind-muscle connection and to actually find out which is your dominant side, you can begin by flexing each side of the muscle, and usually the dominant side can flex harder than the weaker side. By flexing, you can actually improve your mind-muscle connection with that weaker side and improve the contraction for each rep while lifting. Now, this is not the only way to improve your mind-muscle connection. Whether you're doing exercises that are unilateral or bilateral, you can really imagine and tell yourself to concentrate on that weaker side. Now, for example, if I'm doing a bilateral exercise, I can really focus and imagine as though my left side is more important on that lift. So what I mean by training and prioritizing the weaker muscle first is changing the exercise order or which muscle group you actually train first. If your chest is lacking or is weaker than your other muscle groups, you can prioritize your chest first in whether you're doing chest and triceps, or if you're doing a push day, you can always do chest first. This could even mean that if you feel like your triceps are lacking in size and strength, you can begin by doing your triceps first and then move on to chest. So it's completely okay to actually train your smaller muscle groups first and then your bigger muscle groups. And then when it comes to side muscle imbalances, you should always train your weaker side first, and then you can match the same reps with the corresponding side. Next up are the different types of exercises we can do to fix our muscle imbalances. And the different types of exercises that we have are unilateral, isolateral, and bilateral exercises. If you don't know what these are, here is a quick explanation for each of the exercises. Unilateral exercises is pretty much training one side of your body first. So for example, I might do single leg lunges, where I train one leg and then I move on to training the other. And then we have our isolateral exercise, where we're using both sides at the same time, but we're pushing separate weights. So for example, I might be doing some dumbbell incline presses where I'm using both sides, but I'm pressing the same and separate weights. Finally, we have bilateral exercises. This is where we're lifting one weight with both sides. So for example, barbell row is one weight, but I'm using both of my arms to lift that weight. When it comes to imbalances, I always suggest doing unilateral and isolateral exercises. This way you can really isolate each side of the muscle group and avoid having a stronger side while doing bilateral exercises. This does not mean that you should completely avoid and stop doing your bilateral exercises, but I would use a process that would allow me to get to doing more bilateral exercises by avoiding growing my current imbalances or getting new muscle imbalances. So first, I would start off by doing unilateral exercises. This way, I can really focus on that mind-muscle connection with the weaker side and eventually grow the weaker side to match the stronger side. And then I would start to move on to doing more isolateral exercises. This way I can see if my weaker side has really caught up to that stronger side. And once I start to feel like both my sides are same in size and strength, I'll start moving on to doing more bilateral exercises while still focusing on that weaker side, so that I don't grow an imbalance again. Moving on to the third tip, you need to fix your overall workout program and manage your training volume. I understand it can be quite difficult making sure each muscle group gets a sufficient amount of volume for growth, especially for beginners. Maybe you have been doing loads of pushing exercises, so doing loads of chest and shoulders and not enough pulling exercises to grow your back and your rear delts, which has caused you to have a front dominant physique and has caused your shoulders to roll forward. In this case, you cannot only start with the weaker and smaller muscle groups, such as your rear delts, but you also want to make sure that you structure the workout plan that gives you more volume for that weaker side. Again, more volume does not always equal more growth, but since that muscle group has been lacking and hasn't had enough volume for growth, it can be clever to do more volume. In the end, what matters most, in my opinion, is the exercise selection and order. To give another example, if you notice that your chest is bigger than your back and you're doing the same amount of volume for both your chest and back, and your back is still lacking, it could be because of your exercise selection. Let's say every week you're doing these 4 exercises for your back, but the problem here is all 4 exercises are targeting your lats, and there really isn't enough variation of exercises or grips to target your mid or upper back. So instead of doing 4 versions of essentially the same thing, I would first change up some of the exercises to avoid redundancy. Now, if you are personally struggling with your workout and nutrition programs, make sure to let me know in the comments, send me an email or a DM, and I'll make sure to hit you back. My fourth tip, which is pretty simple, but it is very important to actually fixing your muscle imbalance, and that is being patient and actually accepting it. One key thing to remember, sometimes it actually might not be a muscle imbalance, rather just a difference in muscle insertion and just the shape of the muscle, which we really can't fix in any way. If it is a muscle imbalance that can be fixed, you just need to be patient, and if you have been training for years and it has been developing for years, it is going to take a bit of time to actually fix that muscle imbalance, which is again completely okay. And most of the time people just tend to obsess over these muscle imbalances, and realistically, if you do have a dominant side or just a dominant muscle group, it's not the end of the world, and it can be actually very normal, just depending on how you live your day-to-day life. Whereas, you might be using your right arm more or your left leg more. So it is a very natural and normal thing. And it's probably not even that noticeable because we are usually our worst critic. That muscle imbalance might not be as visible as you may think it may be. And finally, I actually have a bonus tip, and this is to actually film yourself and identify what the problem may be. As I do film myself at the gym, one thing that I suggest everyone to do is actually film yourself at the gym. You can get someone to record your set or just place your phone somewhere to record yourself. Sometimes you might think that you're doing an exercise with perfect form and both sides are getting the same stretch and contraction, which might not be the case. By recording yourself, you can actually learn a lot more about the things that you need to change or actually improve. Ultimately guys, train hard, focus on your form and progressive overload, apply these tips that I gave you, and don't really obsess or overly obsess with your muscle imbalances. Make sure to subscribe, like, and share it with as many friends as possible to help them out. And again, thank you guys for watching, and see you guys next time.